Good Wednesday, everyone. How's it going? Say, did you guys watch, was it a couple days ago in Venezuela when they are firing their anti-aircraft guns off? You know, there was a lot of the whole fake news YouTube guys, which, my thoughts on them, I think they're all pretty much worthless. It's like the 99 percentile of these guys. Right, they instantly jump on the moment video appear online, and then they have their clickbait titles that say like, you know, Venezuelan anti-aircraft guns are shooting at American drones, or some even had clickbait titles that said drones are blowing things up in Venezuela. And so anyway, I did eventually get around to watching those anti-aircraft guns firing, and needless to say, I mean that the old school stuff that the third world countries still have, like the sort of the World War II, pop 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 pop. Those guns are always kind of cool. Matter of fact, in Desert Storm, if you remember, Saddam Hussein had a shit ton of them. I mean, that was some cool shit when you watched the air raids of Desert Storm. Most countries don't I've never actually seen any country since Iraq have that many of them, but they're still kind of cool to watch. Anyway, I say all that because I always measure a lot of this by legacy news, right? And it's just a real simple thing. Like I draw on, sometimes if I'm really concerned, I'll draw a box, and it'll have like 6 or 7 things in that box I'll write down that talks about logically what we could be seeing, and basically to logically come to a conclusion. And it's a truth box, if you will. I forget exactly what they call them, but I call them the truth box. And anyway, I'm watching this, and like I said, they're cool to watch. But after it's done, it's just very brief, It's not apparent that there's anything other than anti-aircraft gunfire going off. And for all the YouTuber fake news guys out there that put clickbait hyperbole up every day, Speak the Truth, The Enforcer, and all these guys. By the way, I think Speak the Truth, I've said this many times, they're probably the best one you can watch. But even Matt Tario does a terrible job at just putting shit out that never happens. And I always gauge this too by legacy news, these events, right? Because some of these events are so big, like it's not a matter of suppression. Like there's the events are so big and within themselves that even the legacy news agencies, they can't deny it. They can't not show it, if that makes sense. So a couple nights ago, when all this happened, broke out, I zoomed across the internet on my cell phone. Oh, let's see what Fox News has to say. So I go there, military page, every part of Fox News, nothing. Then I go to CNN, the Communist News Network, nothing. Then I go to MSNBC, nothing. Then I go to Wall Street Journal, nothing. You see what I'm saying? You see where I'm going? ABC, nothing. NBC, nothing. CBS, nothing. Okay. It goes to show, my point is, it goes to show nothing was happening. There was anti-aircraft fire. That I can't deny because I see it in the video. But once again, going back to all the fake news hyperbole of drones are bombing targets in Venezuela. Didn't happen. Right? Wasn't happen. Didn't happen. Oh, by the way, is those quote-unquote anti-aircraft guns even real? with AI nowadays creating videos, is it even real? I don't know. I'm not going to say it's not real. I can only tell you what I see with my own eyes. But what I'm really fascinated at this point, knowing that nothing was going on, is that was it just an old video posted and being re-pushed out there? That I don't know. And I don't care to know, to be honest with you. But my general point is, no drones were blowing targets up in Venezuela. None of this was true. Like, it was all fake. The only thing real was artillery or anti-aircraft guns going off. Now, personally, what I think it was or could be is just the regime who, since Maduro's capture over the weekend, they haven't been doing anything that Donald Trump said was going to happen. Right? Donald Trump was like, oh, they're working with us. They're working with me. Remember, that's what he was saying in his video. But that's opposite of what they've been releasing in the press. The military has been talking tough. The vice president, who's now the president of Venezuela, has been talking tough. Everything Trump says is actually opposite of the reality, is my point. I think, assuming this is an actual real video that wasn't faked, I think it's just them showing a sign of strength. They being the communist government. Because we've actually seen this happen throughout history fairly often. The governments, in defiance to America, will just create a singular event, and then they'll release it across all the TVs and radio networks in the country, and they'll say, like, see, I told you we're defending against America, or see, I told you we did this or that, okay? I think they just possibly faked it. As in, you just fire off some shot. I mean, remember, we only watched maybe 2 or 3 minutes of anti-aircraft fire, and then they just stopped. Well, none of those anti-aircraft sites were blown up. They just stopped shooting. So I think it was just possibly just a show of strength, a complete fake show of strength, which is not uncommon. It happens a lot. You know, if you have any group of people within your country that's thinking about rebellion, you can just create fake things out of nothing and say, see, this is what happens to you if you cross this line. I think that's what's most likely happened in that video. But no, Matt Tario and all these guys should have much higher standards, but they have very little standards. Right? It's just like every day, right? The Enforcer, the Silicon Curtain, Times Rail, all these guys, every day. Literally, if you don't believe me, go to their YouTube channel, look at it. Every day, Ukraine blew up oil rig in Russia, or Ukraine blew up an army tank of Russia, or blah, blah, blah. You know, it's always Russia, Russia, Russia. And then they'll say, see, I told you, they're losing the war. That's what they'll always end up saying. But that's opposite of reality. They're losing equipment, of course, but they're not losing the war. It's just this fake narrative. It's endless. I don't understand it. But anyway, I was curious if you had seen that and what your thought on it was. The second news I was going to say is United States captured 2 more of those oil tankers today. But I also wanted to point out the one Russian oil tanker that was captured today, which was the one they tried to capture, was it 2 or 3 weeks ago, and then they never did. It didn't even have oil on it. That's already being reported. So I will say this. A lot of times people just want to say oil, oil, oil. Well, don't always have anything really to do with oil. Oil is a part of the puzzle, but it's not like got anything to do with it. And specifically, here's an empty oil tanker. Why does Special Forces land on it and capture it? Because somewhere back 2, 3, 4 years ago, this oil tanker was caught breaking some kind of law, where it was American or international law, and now they finally caught up to it, and they're essentially doing an arrest on the ship, just like if you got a speeding ticket or something crazy like that. They're just simply doing an arrest, in this case, to an oil tanker, which happened a long time ago, but they finally caught up with it today. So anyway, couple news items on the that's happening, and or did happen, and trying to think if there's anything else. There's always big things, but it's kind of like, is there anything bigger than those things? I don't know. But I was just wondering if anyone had seen that. Damn, man, what is it? Playoffs for the NFL start, what, Saturday, I think? Super Bowl is, what, 5 weeks away, I think? And, yeah, I mean, Happy New Year, everyone. We're starting the new year off with a bang. I mean, I could just say, like, I had a lady the other day in my comment box ask me a question, something to the effect like, when do I think China will be bartering using bartering their silver for oil? And I'm just like, huh? Who is this lady? Why is China going to barter silver for oil? Like, what the hell is she talking about? Like, this is the brainwave of American adults, sadly, in our country nowadays. First thing, why would China, like, I'm just thinking logically back to myself when she asked the question, like, why would China barter silver for oil? That would imply that China doesn't have oil. And what's this lady premise that China has no oil based off? Well, it's pretty obvious because of the world event that just happened. Her brain says because Maduro was captured, and based off what Donald Trump said, that China must not have oil, and so thus they must have to barter their silver to get oil. But that's not even true. Like, that's just not even remotely true. And this is the type of this lack of critical thinking or intelligence American adults have nowadays. It blows my mind. First thing, here's another thing about that. It wouldn't matter anyway, because it's just I'm gonna point this out in a second. But the whole situation with China and Venezuela, okay, is that, and Trump even said this in his press conference, that he would probably sell oil to China and Russia. I mean, he says it right there at the press conference because, it's about making money, he said. Okay. You can see, I could talk forever on this. It just drives me nuts, okay? But let's just talk for China for 1 second. China is not dependent on Venezuelan oil to survive. As a matter of fact, China has got no problem with oil. Like, it's abundant, right? They got an abundance of oil supply. Just because they buy cheap oil from Venezuela doesn't mean they're reliant on Venezuela's oil, right? And this has been happening this entire time in Ukrainian war too, right? Why does the sanctions in Russia? I'm not going to say it causes no pain. It's more like it's more like it causes things to be harder to do. It's more of a I'm trying to think of the word. It makes things more difficult for them to do, but it's not. It doesn't stop anything. Like, this is why those sanctions have essentially failed on Russia long term, is because Russia is a landlocked nation. I mean, they got ocean. You know what I'm saying? They're landlocked to the majority of the world population. Uh, they don't they don't have to move oil on tankers across the ocean to sell oil. And as a matter of fact, they don't. When you put sanctions on oil companies in Russia, what does Russia do? They send it down to China on train track and semi trucks, probably even a pipeline at this point. And China then takes that oil at a massive discount. That's their form of bribe, if you will, for doing it for them. They give themselves some oil, and then they put it in the Chinese ships and transport it, say, to places like Africa and sell it for Russia. And Russia just keeps on making money. It never actually stops, is my point. And this is one of the biggest fallacies that all these fake news internet guys will never tell you. Russia just sells the oil on the second market, or moves the oil by second party, third party, fourth party, fifth party people. You think about Southeast Asia, right? Russia cuts a deal with China, Vietnam, Malaysia, Thailand, Cambodia, any of these places in Southeast Asia, right? They just cut deals with them. And then you got that entire southeast peninsula of Asia. Every last one of them have oil tankers, and every last one of them potentially can move Russia's oil, and do move Russia's oil. And the biggest offender is China, which you really can't stop, right? There's too many ships. You can't police them all. And they really can't police them anyway, because there's no real significant naval presence to go across the ocean and police them, right? People are shocked to understand that. Like, you got technology today, but modern navies, just like in World War II, they still disappear into the Pacific Ocean, or they can still disappear into the Atlantic Ocean. It's not, following them isn't as easy as people just assume. The ocean's massive, and once you lose track, man, that's it. It's very common boats disappear into the Pacific still. I don't mean like lost at sea, like they're just like, oh shit, where did they go? Okay, that's a real thing, even with technology. So yeah, I don't know what these knuckleheads are talking about. It's always fake news. So the lady asked me this question in the comment box. China's never going to barter anything because, look, China doesn't have an oil shortage. And by the way, China's all over the place. They're in Africa looking for gold. They're in South America looking for gold, silver, oil. They're all over the place. This is part of the reason why you see Donald Trump doing what he's doing in South America. He's trying to kick these yahoos out, but kicking them out, successfully or not, doesn't mean that China has some kind of oil shortage. They don't have it. Russia doesn't have an oil shortage. Russia is like Venezuela. 90% of all of its money is made by sale of oil. So when you put sanctions on them, you see, it slows the things down. It's a convenience thing, right? But here's what I was going to say about that whole Russia part. This is why, and Donald Trump, who eats his own words, his own crow, eat crow, whatever, he said it right there at the press conference. Oh, it's all about making money, he says. And he actually says at the press conference, oh, we'll probably sell oil to China or Russia from Venezuela. Yeah, we'll probably do that. Right. He simultaneously calls those guys his enemies. And he simultaneously says he's got the greatest relationship in the world with them. And that Z is a great man. And that Vladimir Putin is the best thing since, Swiss cheese or something. He'll say all this shit. But then the next, and then the next breath call them enemies, and then the next breath say, oh yeah, I'll probably sell them oil. That's what I'm saying. It's all bullshit. And this is why, if you watch any YouTube personality and they can't tell you that, what I just told you, you probably shouldn't watch them because they don't know very much. I don't care if they used to be fucking Army Airborne Ranger, Navy SEAL badass. That's just the reality. This is the other problem Ukraine has in fighting a war. And Donald Trump is just, with his own words, said it. And I'll tell you, because this is the reality. So Ukraine, who can't win the war against Russia anyway at this point, but regardless of that, this is one of the reasons why they can't win. Because all those ways that Russia makes money to keep their country going, right? The sale of natural gas and oil, right? All the countries involved in that war continue to buy these resources. For example, 4 years ago, I'm just using fictitious numbers here, but I'm trying to make you understand this, okay? 4 years ago, say America was buying 30% of Russian oil, okay, from Russia. Let's say in 2025, well, it's 2026 now. Let's say in 2026, because they want to act tough and be tough against Russia, now DC says, well, we'll buy only 10% of oil from Russia. That's still 10% of oil you're buying from Russia. And you're double talking. All at the same time, you're saying, well, we put sanctions on Russia. Okay, we put sanctions on Russia, but we're still buying 10% of their oil. Europe. Oh yeah, we put 80% sanctions on Russia. But Germany, France, and Britain, Norway, Finland, Denmark, those countries specifically, and maybe Poland, maybe Estonia on top of that, all those countries are what? Buying natural gas from them. And it's probably to the tune of at least 30 or 40%. Meanwhile, on camera, they're shaking hands like, hey, buddy, we're going to get real tough with Russia. And it's just a fucking photo op. They're doing nothing. It's words. But on the action, words mean nothing. Action means everything. They got the words going, but there's no action. Behind the scenes, they ain't doing shit. They're not doing anything. They're still buying 30 or 40% of natural gas from Russia. Why? Because that's how they heat their homes in Europe. And they don't develop their own natural gas because they're all like, well, we're going to sign on to the Paris Climate Accord and waste $1 trillion and not help our own country out. So, but they'll buy that same shit from big offenders like Russia. And this is why that stuff never ends. You can't ever fully put the clamps down on Russia's economy if all the countries involved who are still buying weapons and sending them to Ukraine are simultaneously still buying natural resources from Russia. Think about that. Some of this goes right back to even Biden himself. Well, the war started under Biden. But remember, even in the Biden years when he was overseeing the Ukraine war, there was this concept and idea at one time that they might make these special kind of ships and build them that carried natural gas. And the idea was we'd cut off all the European natural gas buying from Russia, and then we would send the ships from America with American natural gas and basically fuel European with American natural gas. But the problem at least they were talking about under Biden at that time was it wasn't economically viable for them. Like, they could build these big ass ships, but they could never carry enough natural gas that Europe would actually need. Yeah, any amount might help, but it just economically wasn't really viable. Donald Trump comes in, uses the same concept, but he spins the story the other way. Oh, they got these amazing ships. They're so amazing. I mean, they're the ships that the world have never seen before. They're the greatest. They're the greatest natural gas ships ever. I mean, they're so great. They can put on 300 tons of natural gas and blah, blah. It's the same ship, but Donald Trump comes in as president and he just spins the story. What's the truth? Probably what Biden said. What's probably not true? What Trump says. But my point is, those ships have to be built. They don't exist today. They do have natural gas cargo ships, but the ones they're talking about are like a new model, a new version, ones that are much, much bigger than currently exist. And once again, Trump comes in office, he just spins the story the opposite way. Because in his mind, you just sell shit and make money, regardless if it's economically feasible or not. But my point, those ships don't even exist. They don't even exist. So, anyway, people got to grasp this. They got to grasp this information. They got to grasp this. It's pretty, I think, to me, it's pretty elementary. But, like, I don't understand why anyone would be popping into my YouTube comment box saying, yeah, man, when's China going to start using or bartering their silver for oil? Well, why would they? There's no Chinese oil collapse on the horizon. They got plenty and plenty of oil. They got a national, like America, they got their own little version of a national oil reserve. They got, there's just no oil crunch. It doesn't matter if America blocks all of the Venezuelan oil from China. It doesn't change anything for them. They got oil coming from all across the world, from a bunch of different countries. They just make new deals with new people. It doesn't stop them at all. Dumb question. But in the bigger impact of Ukraine, that's why on the financial side, that war can never really be won. On the manpower side of things, it won't be won because that's the most important thing at this point. Manpower. There you go. All right, guys. Oh, man. 30 minutes is too long for this shit. Have a good day, knuckleheads. Talk to you later. Bye.